The Nexarian warship Eternal Dawn hung in the darkness of space like a predator waiting to strike. Admiral Kextal stood on the command bridge, his scaled fingers drumming against the crystalline control panel as he studied the approaching vessel. The ship's design was unlike anything registered in Imperial databases, crude by Nexarian standards, but intriguing in its simplicity. Another primitive species attempting to reach the stars, Kextal remarked to his second-in-command, Commander Vress. How quaint. The human vessel, designated as the UES Pioneer, had emerged from an unexplored sector of space 3 days ago. Its trajectory suggested peaceful exploration, but the Nexarian Empire hadn't maintained its dominion over 12,000 worlds by assuming peaceful intentions. Their propulsion system appears to be based on primitive fusion technology, Vress reported, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the bridge's ambient lighting. No quantum drives, no dimensional folding capabilities. They're practically defenseless. Kextal's 4 eyes narrowed as he considered his options. Standard protocol demanded that all new spacefaring species be properly welcomed into the Empire, a process that typically involved a display of overwhelming force followed by immediate surrender. It was a tradition that had served the Nexarians well for over 3 millennia. Send the standard warning, he ordered. Let's see how quickly they submit. The message was transmitted in all known galactic languages: immediate surrender or immediate destruction. The Nexarians had perfected this approach over countless first contacts. Most species, faced with the technological gulf between their vessels and Imperial warships, chose the path of survival. The humans' response, when it came, was not what anyone expected. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Pioneer," a calm voice replied in perfect galactic standard. "We are a peaceful exploration vessel operating under international charter. Any hostile action against this ship will be considered an act of war against humanity. We strongly advise you to reconsider your position." Laughter erupted across the bridge. Kextal himself couldn't suppress a chirp of amusement. The audacity of these primitives was entertaining, if nothing else. "Fire a warning shot," he commanded. "Something to demonstrate the futility of resistance." The Eternal Dawn's primary weapon system, a particle beam capable of splitting planets, powered up. Vress targeted a spot just ahead of the human vessel, intending to give them a proper demonstration of Nexarian might. The beam never reached its target. In the fraction of a second between the weapon's activation and discharge, something impossible happened. The supposedly primitive human ship released a cloud of what appeared to be metallic dust. As the particle beam struck this cloud, it scattered, splitting into thousands of harmless fragments of energy. "Impossible," Vress whispered. "Their technology, it's not." Defensive countermeasures detected, the ship's AI announced. "Warning, unknown technology in use. Unable to classify." Before Kextal could process this development, the human ship changed. Panels that had appeared decorative split apart, revealing weapon ports that hadn't appeared on any scan. The vessel's entire structure seemed to shift, transforming from an exploration ship into something else entirely. "This is your final warning," Captain Chen's voice came again, now edged with steel. "Withdraw immediately." Kextal's pride wouldn't allow retreat. "Launch fighters. Full attack pattern." The Eternal Dawn's fighter bay doors opened, releasing a swarm of the Empire's finest combat vessels. They moved in perfect formation, each pilot linked to a central combat AI that coordinated their attacks with mathematical precision. The humans didn't launch fighters. Instead, their ship released what looked like small probes, hundreds of them, each no bigger than a personal transport pod. The Nexarian fighters ignored these, focusing on their primary target. That was their last mistake. The probes activated, creating a web of energy that caught the Nexarian fighters like insects in amber. Each fighter's systems went dark, their pilots helpless as their vessels drifted in space. "By the first sun," Vress breathed. "What are they?" The answer came in the form of a massive energy surge from the Pioneer. The ship's apparent transformation wasn't complete, it was still changing, adapting, becoming something that defied Nexarian understanding of spacecraft design. Their hull, one of the sensor operators called out, "It's learning. Adapting to our weapon frequencies in real time. Every scan we perform, every weapon we target, it's using our own data against us." Kextal felt something he hadn't experienced in his 2 centuries of service: fear. These humans hadn't built a warship disguised as an exploration vessel. They'd built something far more dangerous, a ship that could become whatever it needed to be. "All ships, retreat to dash." Kextal's order was cut short as every system on the Eternal Dawn simultaneously went dark. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the bridge in an ominous red glow. "Your empire has a history of subjugating peaceful species," Captain Chen's voice echoed through the darkness. "We studied you before making contact. Every conquest, every welcomed species, every broken civilization left in your wake. We came prepared not because we wanted war, but because we knew you would force one upon us." The lights returned, but the ship's systems remained locked. On every screen, in every display, the same message played in Nexarian script: "Humanity stands ready." As Kextal watched helplessly, the Pioneer turned and disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a disabled flagship, a field of powerless fighters, and a message that would soon echo across the Empire: the humans didn't just fight wars, they revolutionized them. In the days that followed, as Nexarian rescue ships retrieved the Eternal Dawn and its crew, Kextal couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a failed first contact. It was the beginning of something much larger, a fundamental shift in the balance of power that had governed the galaxy for millennia. The humans had revealed only a fraction of their capabilities, and they had done so with a single ship. The question that kept Kextal awake during the long journey back to Imperial space wasn't whether there would be war, it was whether the Empire was ready for the kind of war humanity would wage. They would soon find out that they weren't ready at all. The Grand Council chamber of the Nexarian Empire had never been so quiet. 12,000 years of recorded history played out in the crystalline murals that lined its walls, each one depicting another species brought under Imperial rule. Now, those same murals seemed to mock the assembled War Council as reports of their latest encounters with humanity filtered in. Supreme Commander Ixis, leader of the combined Imperial fleets, stood before the Emperor himself. His normally pristine armor bore stress fractures, a visible sign of his recent narrow escape. "They're not fighting us," Ixis reported, his voice hollow. "They're solving us." Emperor Vaxthor leaned forward on his crystalline throne, all 4 eyes narrowed. "Explain." "We deployed the Third Fleet to their colony on Proxima B, standard invasion protocol, overwhelming force, tactical precision. But when we arrived..." Ixis paused, mandibles clicking in distress. The planet was empty. No cities, no infrastructure, no signs of the civilization our scouts had reported just days earlier. "They fled," one of the council members suggested hopefully. "No," Ixis activated a holographic display. "They were waiting. The entire planet was a trap." The hologram showed massive Nexarian warships approaching the seemingly abandoned planet. As they entered orbit, the planet's surface began to shift. What appeared to be natural formations revealed themselves as massive mechanical structures. The entire colony had been designed to appear deserted while concealing a planetary-scale defense system. "The humans didn't build a colony with defenses," Ixis continued. "They built defenses that looked like a colony. Every building, every structure was part of an integrated weapon system. They turned the entire planet into a combat organism." The hologram showed the devastating result. The Third Fleet, pride of the Empire, hadn't even had time to launch fighters before the planet's surface erupted with countless weapon systems. But instead of destroying the ships, the weapons targeted specific systems: engines, weapons, communications. Within minutes, the entire fleet was disabled but largely intact. "They could have destroyed us," Ixis said quietly. "Instead, they disabled our ships and left us stranded in orbit. Then they sent this message to every vessel simultaneously. The hologram changed to show simple text in Nexarian script: war is inefficient. Adaptation is inevitable. Choose wisely. Emperor Vaxthor's ceremonial armor clicked as he shifted uncomfortably. How many ships have we lost? That's the most disturbing part, Your Eminence. We haven't lost any. The humans aren't destroying our ships, they're collecting them. Every vessel we've sent against them has been disabled and towed away through their quantum corridors. We don't know where they're taking them or why. Another council member, Admiral XRA, spoke up. Surely their technology has limits. The energy required to transport entire fleets. Their energy technology defies our understanding, Ixis interrupted. They don't seem to use conventional power sources. Their ships, their weapons, they adapt and evolve during combat. It's as if their technology is alive. The Emperor rose from his throne, moving to study the historical murals. How do they coordinate these attacks? We've detected no command centers, no central military authority. As far as we can tell, they don't coordinate in any way we recognize. Each human ship, each installation operates independently but somehow maintains perfect strategic cohesion. It's like watching a school of fish move through water. No central control, but perfect synchronization. The council chamber erupted in worried whispers. The Empire had faced resistance before, even temporary defeats, but nothing like this. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and central command. The humans weren't just defeating them, they were making their entire approach to warfare obsolete. There's more, Ixis added reluctantly. We've begun detecting unusual activities within our own territory. Unexplained system failures, communication disruptions, strange energy signatures. We believe the humans have been in our space far longer than we realized, gathering intelligence, studying our weaknesses. How? The Emperor demanded. Our detection systems are designed to find what we expect to find, Ixis finished. The humans, they don't think like us. They don't build like us. They've developed technologies that don't register on our sensors because we never imagined technology could work that way. A junior officer burst into the chamber, a breach of protocol that would normally mean immediate execution. But the news he carried silenced any thought of punishment. The Eternal Citadel has gone dark, he reported breathlessly. Our primary shipyards, they're just gone. The Emperor sank back onto his throne. The Eternal Citadel was the heart of Imperial shipbuilding, a massive structure that had produced the Empire's warships for millennia. Its defenses were thought impregnable. Not destroyed, Ixis clarified, reading the incoming data. Like our ships, it's just disappeared. Wait, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel Pioneer. The same calm voice that had first confronted Admiral Kextal filled the chamber. Your shipyards have been relocated to a secure facility. Your ships and crews remain unharmed. This conflict can end whenever you choose. Humanity did not seek this war, but we will end it, one way or another. The message ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The humans weren't just winning, they were fundamentally changing the rules of warfare. Each encounter revealed new aspects of their capabilities, suggesting they were showing only a fraction of their true potential. Emperor Vaxthor turned to his council, his voice heavy with realization. We're not fighting a war against humans. We're participating in their demonstration of how obsolete our concept of war has become. As if to emphasize this point, the crystalline murals depicting the Empire's great victories began to fade, their molecular structure somehow altered to show different images: peaceful first contacts, cooperative ventures, species working together. The humans were rewriting their history before their eyes, turning monuments to conquest into visions of what could be. The message was clear: adapt or become irrelevant. The Empire had prided itself on being the most advanced civilization in known space. Now they faced a species that treated their greatest achievements like relics from a primitive past. The silent strategy of humanity wasn't just winning a war, it was forcing an entire civilization to confront its own obsolescence. In the depths of uncharted space, aboard the Nexarian mining outpost Stellar Forge 7, Chief Engineer Rental was about to make a discovery that would shatter the Empire's last illusions of superiority. "These readings can't be right," she muttered, analyzing the data streaming across her crystalline displays. The station's sensors had detected irregular energy patterns in what should have been empty space, patterns that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. Then she saw it. The void itself appeared to ripple, like heat waves over desert sand, and from this distortion emerged a human mining vessel. But unlike the militarized ships that had been dismantling the Empire's fleets, this one appeared crude, practically ancient by comparison. Its hull was scarred, its design utilitarian. Rental's first instinct was to sound the alarm, but curiosity stayed her hand. The station's automated defenses hadn't activated, they didn't even register the vessel's presence. She watched, fascinated, as the human ship began its work. The vessel extended what looked like primitive mining equipment, but as Rental observed their operation, she realized she was witnessing something revolutionary. The tools weren't breaking down asteroids, they were restructuring matter at a fundamental level. The humans weren't mining resources, they were transforming them. "Impossible," she whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. The human ship was converting common space debris into refined materials more valuable than the rarest imperial metals. They had turned the basic act of resource gathering into an art form of atomic manipulation. Across the Empire, similar revelations were occurring. Human civilian vessels, seemingly less advanced than their military counterparts, were demonstrating technological capabilities that defied imperial understanding. Each one operated differently, adapted differently, evolved differently. In the Centauri sector, imperial scientists observed human agricultural ships creating sustainable ecosystems on dead worlds in days rather than centuries. Their methods didn't terraform planets, they awakened them, triggering processes that transformed lifeless rocks into living systems. Near the galactic core, human medical ships were curing diseases the Empire had fought for generations, not through advanced medicine, but by teaching the body's own cells to evolve beyond the illness. They didn't fight disease, they helped life transcend it. Admiral Zexra, now tasked with understanding the human threat, compiled these reports with growing unease. "They're not just adapting their military technology," she reported to the Emperor. "Every aspect of their civilization is in constant evolution. Their civilian ships are as formidable as their warships, just in different ways." The Emperor, watching another report of a human vessel transforming a toxic waste dump into a thriving ecosystem, finally understood. "They don't build technology to serve specific purposes," he said. "They build technology that learns to serve any purpose." This revelation came too late to prevent the Empire's greatest humiliation. Deep within Imperial space, the legendary planet Forge, source of the Empire's most advanced materials, detected an anomaly in its production systems. The automated factories, the pride of Imperial engineering, had begun producing materials that shouldn't have been possible. Investigation revealed that human nanomachines had infiltrated the facility months ago. But instead of sabotaging production, they had been subtly improving it, teaching the Imperial systems how to transcend their original limitations. The message left in the facility's main computer was elegantly simple: evolution isn't a choice. It's a necessity. The implication stunned Imperial leadership. The humans hadn't needed to destroy their manufacturing capabilities, they had simply made them evolve beyond Imperial control. Every human encounter, whether military or civilian, carried the same message: adapt or become obsolete. In the Proxima trading hub, a human merchant vessel docked for repairs. The Imperial technicians, expecting to study advanced technology, found instead a ship that appeared to be built from salvaged parts. But as they watched, the vessel's systems reconfigured themselves, adapting to use local power sources more efficiently than Imperial designs. "Their strength isn't in their technology," one technician reported. It's in their technology's ability to learn, to change, to become whatever it needs to be. This adaptive edge revealed itself most dramatically during a rescue operation in the Orion sector. A stellar eruption threatened several Imperial colonies. The Empire's most advanced ships could only evacuate a fraction of the population before the radiation became lethal. Then the humans arrived, not with warships or advanced rescue vessels, but with a fleet of seemingly outdated cargo haulers. As the Imperial commanders watched in disbelief, these simple ships began to change. Their hulls evolved radiation shielding. Their internal spaces reconfigured to accommodate more passengers. Their engines adapted to the changing solar conditions. What should have been a catastrophic loss became a testament to human ingenuity. Not a single life was lost, and the colonies themselves were preserved as the human ships worked together to create a massive adaptive shield around the threatened worlds. Back in the Empire's capital, Admiral Zexra submitted her final analysis: the humans don't build ships, stations, or tools. They build seeds, technology that grows, learns, and evolves. Every human vessel is a unique expression of this philosophy. They don't seek perfection, they pursue endless adaptation. As if to emphasize this point, Imperial analysts began noticing that every piece of human technology they studied worked differently upon second observation. Their ships, their tools, even their communication methods constantly evolved, making it impossible to develop effective countermeasures. The Empire had prided itself on building the perfect military machine. The humans had shown them that perfection was stagnation, and adaptation was true power. In her outpost, Chief Engineer Rental watched the human mining vessel disappear back into the rippling void. She realized she hadn't witnessed an invasion or an act of espionage. She had seen the future, a future where technology wasn't a tool to be mastered, but a partner in endless evolution. The Empire's greatest fear was no longer that they would lose a war. It was that they would become living artifacts, perfect but unchanging, in a galaxy that had learned to evolve. The Nexarian High Command Center, once a symbol of unshakable Imperial might, had become a chamber of whispers. Emergency meetings occurred hourly as reports flooded in from across the Empire. But these weren't reports of battles lost or territories conquered, they were stories of transformation. High Admiral Vex Nor, recently promoted after his predecessor's mysterious disappearance, stood before the Imperial Council with trembling hands. The outer colonies are changing sides. Defecting? Emperor Vax Thor's voice carried a dangerous edge. No, Your Eminence. They're evolving. The human presence has triggered something in our own people. They're beginning to question not just our military doctrine, but our entire way of life. The evidence was undeniable. On colony after colony, Nexarian citizens were witnessing human adaptation in action. They watched as human settlements transformed barren worlds into paradise without conquering or destroying. They saw human ships change form and function to meet any challenge. Most disturbing of all, they began to ask why their own civilization couldn't do the same. In the Rigel sector, an Imperial governor reported that his people had started modifying their technology using principles learned from observing human devices. Their improvements weren't copies of human designs, they were uniquely Nexarian innovations inspired by human adaptability. The humans aren't defeating us, Vex Nor continued. They're inspiring us to defeat ourselves. The council chamber's crystalline walls, which normally displayed the Empire's military victories, now showed real-time feeds from across Nexarian space. Each image told the same story: change was spreading like a virus through Imperial society. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, factory workers had redesigned their production systems after studying the wreckage of a human cargo vessel. Their innovations increased efficiency by 300%, but more importantly, they had done it without orders from Imperial command. The military academy on Marshall Prime reported that cadets were refusing to study traditional combat doctrine, instead developing new strategies based on adaptation rather than overwhelming force. When threatened with expulsion, they simply asked, how can we lead tomorrow's forces using yesterday's thoughts? It gets worse, Vexnor added, his ceremonial armor creaking as he shifted uncomfortably. Our attempts to understand human technology have backfired. Every time we study their devices, our own scientists begin questioning our fundamental assumptions about how technology should work. The Emperor rose from his throne, moving to study the feeds. Show me. A hologram appeared, displaying the Imperial Research Facility on Nexus 3. The facility had been tasked with reverse engineering captured human technology. Instead, the research team had gone rogue, using their findings to develop entirely new forms of Nexarian technology that violated centuries of Imperial engineering doctrine. Their lead scientist sent this message before we lost contact, Vexnor said, activating the recording. A Nexarian scientist appeared, her eyes bright with an almost religious fervor. We've been building cages, she declared. Perfect, crystalline cages for our minds and our potential. The humans didn't bring us new technology, they showed us that technology itself can be alive, can grow, can dream. We cannot go back to building dead things. The Emperor's mandibles clicked in agitation. Have they been contaminated? Some form of human biological or psychological warfare? No, Your Eminence. They're perfectly healthy. They've simply evolved beyond our control. The implications were staggering. The Empire had prepared for war, for conquest, for resistance. They hadn't prepared for their own people to choose evolution over stability, chaos over order, growth over perfection. Reports continued to flood in. The prestigious Science Academy of Nexus Prime had dissolved its traditional departments, reorganizing around principles of adaptive research. The Imperial Fleet Academy was in chaos as junior officers questioned the chain of command itself, asking why ships needed rigid hierarchies when they could have adaptive command structures. Most alarming were the changes in Imperial youth. Young Nexarians across the Empire had begun modifying their ceremonial armor, a practice that had been unchanged for millennia. They added components that could shift and adapt, mimicking the fluid nature of human technology. Some even started referring to themselves as the adaptive generation. We're losing them, Vexnor concluded. Not to human weapons or warfare, but to human ideas. The very concept of adaptation has infected our society like a virus. The Emperor, watching another feed of Nexarian children playing with self-modifying toys they had built themselves, finally understood the true depth of the human victory. They didn't need to destroy our empire, he said quietly. They just needed to show our people a different way to exist. In that moment, a message appeared on every screen in the council chamber. It was simple, elegant, and devastating in its truth: evolution cannot be controlled. It can only be embraced. The message was signed not by human military command, but by a coalition of Nexarian citizens calling themselves the Adaptives. They didn't demand the Empire's surrender or destruction. They simply declared their intention to change, to grow, to evolve. As the Emperor watched his perfect, crystalline empire fracture not from external force but from internal transformation, he realized that the humans had achieved something far more profound than military victory. They had introduced an idea that made the very concept of empire obsolete. The breaking point hadn't come from battles lost or resources depleted. It had come from the Empire's own people choosing adaptation over stagnation, growth over perfection, evolution over empire. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their adaptable technology or innovative tactics. It was their ability to show others that adaptation wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. A single human ship hung in orbit above the Nexarian imperial capital, its presence more powerful than any fleet. The UES Pioneer, the same vessel that had triggered this revolution 3 months ago, had returned not as a harbinger of war, but as a symbol of transformation. On the bridge of the Pioneer, Captain Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display showing the sprawling Nexarian capital below. The city's crystalline spires, once rigid and unchanging, now shifted and flowed with new purpose. The Empire's perfect geometry had given way to organic evolution. "They're ready," her first officer reported. The invitation had come not from the Emperor, but from a joint council of Nexarian citizens, military officers, and imperial officials, an unprecedented collaboration that would have been unthinkable months ago. In the Grand Assembly Hall, now transformed into a space that could adapt to its occupants' needs, representatives from across the Empire gathered. Emperor Vaxthor sat not on his traditional throne, but among his people. His ceremonial armor, like those of many Nexarians, had been modified to incorporate adaptive elements. Captain Chen's arrival was met not with tension but with curious anticipation. She carried no weapons, wore no armor. The only technology visible was a small device on her wrist, a universal translator that evolved with each new conversation. 3 months ago, she began, we came to your space knowing that contact between our civilizations was inevitable. We also knew that the traditional pattern of imperial expansion would lead to unnecessary conflict and loss of life. The assembled Nexarians listened intently. Many wore expressions of understanding, having witnessed firsthand the transformation of their society. Humanity's history taught us that true strength lies not in perfection, but in adaptation, Chen continued. We didn't want to defeat your empire. We wanted to help it evolve beyond the need for conquest. Emperor Vaxthor rose, his modified armor shifting to match his movements. You succeeded beyond any possibility we could have imagined. But I must ask, why this approach? Why not simply defend yourselves or launch a conventional war? Chen smiled. Because war, as your empire understood it, was already obsolete. Humanity learned long ago that conflict drives evolution, but it doesn't have to drive destruction. We chose to make first contact with a ship that could adapt rather than attack, that could teach rather than destroy. The assembly hall's walls shifted, displaying images from across the empire, Nexarian ships incorporating adaptive technology, colonies developing sustainable ecosystems, young Nexarians creating new forms of art and technology that merged their crystalline heritage with evolutionary principles. Your people were ready for change, Chen said. They just needed to see that it was possible. A young Nexarian scientist stepped forward, her armor flowing like liquid crystal. We've begun to understand that technology isn't just a tool, it's a partnership. Our greatest minds are already exploring possibilities we never imagined when we were bound by rigid doctrine. The Emperor nodded. We thought we had achieved perfection. You showed us that perfection is stagnation. More than that, Chen replied. We showed you that every civilization has the capacity to evolve. Humanity didn't come to teach you our way of doing things. We came to awaken your own potential for adaptation. As if to emphasize this point, the assembly hall itself began to change, its structure responding to the emotional resonance of the gathering. The rigid crystalline architecture flowed into organic forms that enhanced acoustics and facilitated connection between all present. This marks the end of the Nexarian Empire, the Emperor declared, but not the end of our civilization. Today, we become something new, the Nexarian Collective, a society dedicated not to conquest but to continuous evolution. The announcement triggered a wave of transformation throughout the capital. Ancient monuments shifted form, their new configurations telling stories not of conquest but of growth and change. The imperial fleet, once a symbol of military might, began a metamorphosis into a force for exploration and discovery. Captain Chen watched as the Nexarians embraced their new identity. The pioneers' mission had succeeded not through force of arms but through the power of possibility. They had turned potential enemies into partners in evolution. There will be challenges ahead, she addressed the assembly. Evolution is never easy. But humanity stands ready to face those challenges with you, not as conquerors or conquered, but as fellow travelers on the path of continuous transformation. As the gathering concluded, the assembly hall's walls displayed a new symbol, a crystalline structure not rigid and unchanging, but flowing and adaptive, representing the merger of Nexarian strength with human adaptability. The Emperor approached Chen privately. You could have destroyed us, he said quietly. That would have been easy, she replied. Teaching you to destroy your own limitations, that was the real challenge. Above the capital, the Pioneer's hull began to shift, adapting to create a permanent dock that would serve as a symbol of connection between their civilizations. It was no longer just a ship, it had become a bridge between two species' understanding of existence. In the years that followed, the story of the Nexarian transformation would be told across the galaxy not as a tale of war, but as a lesson in evolution. Humanity had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or technology, but the simple, unstoppable power of adaptation. The age of empires was over. The age of evolution had begun.